You haven't done the thing yet, but somehow you already feel better. You watched a motivational video, wrote down a new plan, downloaded an app, bought a notebook. Maybe you even told someone what you're about to do. And for a few minutes, it feels like something has changed. That's probably true. But here's the mistake. You think that feeling came from progress. It didn't. It came from the promise of progress. Think about how strange that is. You can spend months avoiding something. Then, one evening, you finally decide to change. You create a schedule, organize your desk, choose the perfect starting date. And suddenly, the guilt gets quieter. The future looks clearer. You feel more disciplined, more focused, almost proud. Even though nothing difficult has happened yet, you haven't written the first page. You haven't gone to the gym. You haven't made the call. You haven't faced the part you were avoiding. But emotionally, you've already started celebrating. That's why planning can feel so satisfying. A plan turns uncertainty into a story. Before the plan, there's just a problem. After the plan, there's a version of you who is about to solve it. And sometimes, that version feels convincing enough that your brain stops demanding proof. You don't need the result yet. You can already imagine it. The finished project, the healthier body, the new routine, the organized life, the person you'll become once everything finally begins. And imagination is generous. It gives you the emotional reward without asking you to survive the process. That's why watching someone else work hard can briefly make you feel productive. Why buying new equipment can feel like commitment. Why announcing a goal can feel like taking action. Each one brings you closer to the identity you want, at least emotionally. You don't just buy a notebook. You buy the feeling of being organized. You don't just create a schedule. You create the feeling of being disciplined. You don't just tell your friends what you're going to do. For a moment, you get to become the person who does things like that. And maybe that's the real reward. Not the plan itself, the identity attached to it. Because results are slow. They arrive quietly. One page, one workout, one difficult conversation, one ordinary day, followed by another. But identity can change instantly. Inside your head, you can decide that this is your new beginning, that you're finally serious, that this time will be different. And for a moment, the decision itself feels like evidence. Except decisions are comfortable. Execution is not. A plan exists under perfect conditions. The work doesn't. The plan doesn't get tired. It doesn't get distracted. It doesn't discover that the task is more boring, more confusing, or more difficult than expected. The plan is clean. Reality is repetitive. And that's often where the excitement disappears. Not because you stopped caring, because the most emotionally rewarding part already happened. You already imagined the transformation. You already felt the relief. You already received approval from the people you told. You already pictured the result. Now all that's left is the part that doesn't feel inspiring. Doing it again and again. Without applause, without a dramatic beginning, without the rush of becoming someone new. Maybe that's why starting over can feel more exciting than continuing. Continuing forces you to face the gap between the person you imagined and the work that person actually does. Starting over removes that gap. For a moment, everything becomes possible again. A fresh notebook, a new routine, a different strategy. Monday, next month, the beginning of the year, the old attempt disappears, and you're allowed to experience the promise again. That's why people can become addicted, not to progress, but to beginnings. Beginnings are emotionally complete. They contain hope, clarity, energy, a clean story. The middle contains repetition, uncertainty, slow results, and the uncomfortable realization that transformation rarely feels like transformation while it's happening. Most real progress doesn't give you a powerful feeling. It often feels ordinary. Sometimes it feels disappointing. You complete a small task, and nothing changes. You work for an hour, and the project still looks unfinished. You exercise for a week, and still look the same. Reality doesn't reward intention. It rewards repetition, and repetition is rarely cinematic. That's where the strange imbalance appears. The easiest parts give you the strongest emotions. The hardest parts give you almost nothing immediately. Talking about the goal feels exciting. Working quietly feels invisible. Designing the routine feels clear. Following it feels restrictive. Imagining the result feels meaningful. Repeating the same small action can feel pointless. So your brain learns something. It learns that preparing to change feels better than changing, not consciously. You don't decide to avoid the work. You simply keep returning to the parts of the process that provide the fastest relief. Another video, another plan, another system, another conversation about what you're about to do. Each one feels connected to the goal, which is exactly why it's so difficult to notice when preparation becomes avoidance. Because avoidance usually looks like escape. This doesn't. This looks responsible. You're researching, organizing, learning, getting ready. Everything appears useful, and sometimes it is. But useful preparation has an ending. Eventually, it hands control to action. Avoidance disguised as preparation never does. It keeps improving the map, so you never have to enter the territory. Maybe you've experienced this. You spend hours building the perfect system. Then the moment comes to do the first simple task, and suddenly you feel resistance. That resistance seems confusing. You were motivated 5 minutes ago. You felt ready. You felt certain. So where did the motivation go? It didn't disappear. It completed its job. It rewarded the decision, not the behavior. Your brain celebrated the moment you imagined change. By the time reality arrived, the emotional event was already over. Now you're left with a task that feels strangely disconnected from the excitement that created it. And this is where people often misunderstand themselves. They assume the plan was wrong. The timing was wrong. The method wasn't interesting enough. So they search for a better beginning. A better video. A better app. A better morning routine. Something that can bring back the original feeling. But the original feeling was never proof that the system would work. It was the reward for believing that it might. Maybe that's why intention can become so deceptive. It feels morally similar to action. You meant to do it. You seriously considered it. You prepared for it. You cared about it. And all of those things are emotionally real, but reality doesn't measure how sincere the intention felt. It only reveals what happened afterward. The book remains unwritten. The message remains unsent. The application remains unfinished. The room is still disorganized. The difficult decision is still waiting. Not because you didn't want the outcome, because wanting the outcome already gave you enough relief to survive another day without creating it. Maybe that's the hidden cost of rewarding yourself too early. You don't lose the goal. You lose the tension that might have moved you toward it. The problem begins to feel manageable before it has been managed. The guilt disappears before anything has changed. The identity arrives before the evidence. And once the discomfort is gone, the urgency goes with it. So you return to ordinary life, carrying a strangely pleasant belief. That progress has already begun. Maybe tomorrow. You'll open the notebook. Maybe next week. You'll follow the schedule. Maybe this time, you really will become the person you imagined. But until then, the plan keeps doing something useful. It lets you feel successful without forcing reality to agree. And maybe the real reason you keep preparing to change isn't that you don't know how to begin. Maybe beginning has already given you everything you wanted from the goal, except the result.